Dear participants, welcome to NRC, Dr. Harisinghar Vishwavidyalaya, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. I am Shiv Shankar Jana, Assistant Professor from the Department of Sociology of Dr. Harisinghar University, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. I will be discussing on Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program. Is it economic or political empowerment? So, dear participants, before going to discuss what is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Programs and how it is going to improve the condition of the rural populations in economic or a political conditions. Before going to discuss that, first we have to discuss what is development, because Manrega is directly related to the development process in post-colonial India. So, before going to discuss the impact of Manrega in economic or in politicals, first we have to discuss what is development discourse. When you discuss about the development as a discourse, first you have to discuss what is actually inequality, because without understanding inequality, you cannot understand what is the structure and functions or the objectives of Manrega to improve the condition of the rural populations. So, when you talk about inequality, so inequality means there is unequal access of socio-economic and political opportunities. When we say socio-economic means, that means social participations as a decision making process in various social spheres, as living as a human dignified individuals, and there is a cultural inequalities also. And when you talk about like educations, health, gender inequality, it is like social inequalities. And when you say political inequalities, that means there are certain persons, those who are not actually participating in the political opportunity that is given by the state, and economic opportunity, that is the employment opportunities or right to live through a certain kind of subsistence livelihoods. So, these are the inequalities. When you talk about the inequalities, it comes with socio-economic and political inequalities, but it is not our discussion what is inequalities. When it talks about inequality in a development discourse, it talks about it is not what is inequality, but what are the sources of inequalities. Because when you are not able to diagnose the problems of inequalities, then you cannot have a fruitful program or policy formulations to eradicate inequality in a societies. So, in this context, there are mainly three types of inequalities. Like one is called institutional inequalities, there are other is called structural inequalities, and there are other is called individual inequalities. So, when you talks about institutional inequality, that means there is nothing problem with a certain kind of sociocultural value systems where society accept as it is. For example, I will say patriarchy, and there is a gender inequalities. So, when you talks about patriarchy or gender inequalities, it is something relates to a cultural value systems, or it is a family value setups where socialization is very important things. Through socialization process, there is a gender division of labor, and through this gender division of labor, there is an unequal opportunities on the basis of these gender divisions, where females are not getting the equal as much opportunity with male in socio-economic political inequality. So, here there is nothing problem with the women. There is a problem with a socio-cultural value system, a socio-cultural setup where individual personality socialized and the individual cultural cognitive personalities develops through a certain kind of cultural value systems. And there are another kind of inequality which talks about structural inequalities, and that structural inequality means there is a structural division of labor of any societies, that is called social structures. And within social structure, due to this structural division of labor, certain groups are not as much equal to access the socio-economic opportunities with like other groups. So, it is compared to, suppose I will say, caste inequalities. So, when it talks about caste inequality, it is related to a structural inequality where due to a certain condition of division of labor, certain group of populations are not equal as much with the upper caste populations. So, here is there is nothing problem with individual, but here problem with a social structure. Through these social structures, inequality produce and reproduce. And there are another kind of inequality, we call it is an individual inequalities. For example, in class based societies where we wish to achieve status, like there is a competitions. So here there is an individual inequality where there is a problem with individuals, like certain lack of skill, lack of educations, or lack of property leads to inequality in the societies. If you look at, there are three types of inequality exists, and when you say when you are going to make a development process, that means first we have to talk about what kind of inequality actually persists in the societies. So when you say there is an institutional inequality, our policy will be different. We will go to change, or we will go to change the cultural value system of the society. You have to change the family value setup of the societies, and you have to look into the different institutional dimension of policy process. So when you look at there are society where inequalities exist and it is a structural inequality, that means you have to look at a certain kind of policy approach where those certain section of populations are actually marginalized, and you have to formulate a policy to improve their conditions. Like for example, take example reservation system in India. And there are another, if you look at the individual inequalities, then you have to go for another programs, another policy approach, like you can say human resource development, like you can say there is skill development. Government of India is running skill development, which is leads to target the individual inequalities. So there are three types of inequalities, and according to the types of inequality, there are different types of policies and approaches in development process. So when you talk about there are three types of inequality needs three types of policy approaches, what does it mean? That means inequality also produces certain kind of poverty, the situations of poverty within a society. For example, if you look at in the context of the types of inequality, there are mainly three types of poverty. One is what we say absolute poverty, another is chronic poverty, and another is relative poverty. When you talk about absolute poverty, that means we talks about that individuals, those who are not actually getting the minimum basic standard of life to maintain their survivalness within a society. For example, you can say in calorie intake, there is a 2300 calorie for the rural society and 2100 calorie for the urban societies in a calorie intake. But if you normally say keep absolute poverty, that means those populations of a societies are not getting the minimum food, that means to maintain their body mass index, and minimum standard of life, that means to maintain their life as a human being. Those are absolute poverty. If you look at within absolute poverty, there is another poverty which we can say it is a chronic poverty. That means you can say there is a hunger. Chronic poverty means those people are actually not getting food. That means those people are actually affected by malnutrition. That is called chronic poverty. Those who are not getting food to maintain their life, to maintain their energy to survivalness, that is called chronic poverty. So within absolute poverty, there is a chronic poverty, and there is another poverty, those who are actually not maintaining their calorie intakes or the basic standard of life as a human dignified life. And there is another poverty is called relative poverty, and this poverty is something as a comparative perspective. That means I am maintaining my lives, but I do not have a certain kind of luxurious or certain kind of opportunity based life in compared to others. So this is called relative inequality. Most of the times relative inequalities are produces where most of the inequalities are produces through institutional inequalities. So when you talk of the relative inequality, it certainly relates with institutional inequality. For example, gender inequality is a relative poverty compared to male and females. So you can say it is a feminization of poverty. That means that female have a certain kind of existence within the society. They are maintaining the status, but they have to depend economically on their husband. So that is a relative inequality produces relative poverty. But if you look at the chronic poverty and absolute poverty, it is basically either depends on a structural inequality of the society, or it is something individual inequality of the society. Most of the situations like Indian situations, we will find poverty or inequality is persist within a certain kind of structural based inequality. For example, we go for data and we say that much of the percentage of the populations, either chronic or absolute poverties, are living within a lower caste categories. When you take this kind of data, then you can say there is a structural inequality which produces a certain kind of absolute or chronic poverty. If you look at in India, so India is much more faces a certain kind of chronic poverty. For example, if you look at the data, like Harsh Mandir says, what they says, ki every third persons of Indian children are malnourished children in compared to the world malnutrition data. Then what does it means? That means India, most of the like 39%, if you look at in 2010 or 2011, there was a report released by Manmohan Singh in UPA government that 39% of Indian children lives under malnutrition conditions. That data says that India does not live in absolute poverty, but India lives a certain kind of chronic poverties, and that is another poverties where individual does not have, that means the parents or the family does not have the purchasing power parity to purchase food for their minimum existence. So this is kind of poverty, that inequality relates to poverty. Now when it talks about how to eradicate that poverty, that means how to eradicate inequality with poverty, then we talks about a certain kind of justice, because development process, development or formulations of any kind of policies or programs, we need certain kind of what kind of justice you are going to give to the societies. That means inequality, the nature of inequality says what kind of justice you are going to give, and this is the part of development process. Now when you talks about justice, that means the nature of inequality says what kind of justice you are going to give to a particular section of the population or a particular individuals. In this context, there are three kinds of justice, like you can say ideological, and another is material or economic, and another is opportunity creations. For example, I will say there is an institutional inequality persist within a society, then we are going for a certain kind of ideological framework of justice, like for example reservation policies, for example welfare policy of the states, and that welfare policy of the states says how to change the cultural value, establish cultural values of a societies by empowering or by providing certain kind of help, like materials, like certain kind of opportunity based help to that marginalized section of the populations, and to change the societies by giving this kind of justice. Now another kind is called material and economic justice. For example, I will say there are chronic poverty within a society. That means the people does not have their power to purchase a certain kind of material conditions to survive their lives. Then the state or the development planner goes for a justice that providing material or economic condition for them, because they need a certain kind of external interventions, because they do not have a skill or the lack to produce or to consume their material parts to survive. So they need a certain kind of external influence or external helps, like material conditions, like economic conditions to improve their purchasing power. So that is called economic or material justice. For example, I will say populist policies. It started from Indira Gandhi's periods, like Garibi Hatao programs, and they went for a certain kind of popular policies like distributions of houses, like Indira Awas Yojana, and they are giving a certain kind of freeing the loans or certain kind of material conditions to them, provide them for rural populations. Then another kind of justice is called like opportunity creations. Suppose people have their lack, people have their skill, people have their skill of employment, people have their efficiency to produce or to purchase, but they do not have a certain kind of opportunity for income sources. So here the planners goes for a certain kind of justice, that means creating opportunities for these populations, those who are actually potential, those having their skill for employment, but they are not getting employment. So you need a certain kind of opportunities for them. For example, I will say class based inequalities. That means suppose most of the populations having degrees, most of the population having skills, most of the population having their energy to do works, but state or society is not going to provide them works, or society's failure to create a certain kind of opportunity for them. That's why they are inequals. So there are three types of justice I am talking about, and these three types of justice relates to a certain kind of three types of inequality and three types of poverty. On that basis, we talks about the development discourse, and certain times in a simultaneously when we formulate a development policies looking at the nature of the poverty, looking at the nature of the inequality, we can go for multidimensional justice process. Certain you need a certain kind of area or certain kind of context. People need certain kind of ideological intervention like reservation policy or like welfare policies. In certain case, people want certain kind of material conditions or economic supporting from the state. In certain conditions, they want also opportunity creations. And opportunity creations means now the government of India is making a campaign, successfully campaigning like Skill India programs, Skill India missions, or the government started Manrega, that means creating job opportunities, 100 days job opportunity for them. So these are the way of justice relates to way of development policies. In this context, like inequality, poverty, and the formulations of justice to implement the process of justice, in this context, when you talks about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Programs and the Indian development discourse in post-colonial India or post-independent India, then when you talks about Manrega, first you have to look at what is the state approach of the development. State approach for the rural reconstruction or the state approach to improve the socio-economic condition of the vast rural populations. If you look at the state approaches for the development process to rural India in post-independent India, then you will find there are mainly two types of approaches that modern India adopted for the rural development or rural reconstruction or improving the rural populations, conditions of the population. The first is called direct interventions. And why direct interventions? Because if you look at the India's independence in 1947 and if you look at the problems, the socio-economic problems and the political problems of India at that time, then what we find is that British left us with 1% GDP. British left us with most of the populations, like 80% population, rural population, were depending the traditional agricultural farmings with low food productions, because we know when Britishers left us, that means we had only 135 kilogram food grains per individual per annual consumptions. But when you talks about in pre-British period, we will find more than 200 kilogram food grains per individual per annual was there. But when you look at after at 1947, what we find, the data is 135 kilogram. That means our agriculture transformed from a food crop to raw material product cash crops. Our agriculture declined. Our farmers become depeasantized. Our farmers becomes poverty-ridden farmers. So at that times, 80% Indian populations were living a certain kind of what you can say chronic poverty situations. And you look at another kind of situations like there is a vast cultural inequality in the name of caste. Most of the populations are living a certain kind of cultural inequality that is called caste inequality, that is called untouchabilities, all are theirs. And 50% of the population of India, like female, they were living under the four walls of the houses, even they didn't know what is the freedom that India got. So in this context, and there another that India faces is called India-Bangladesh, India-Pakistan's dividations and the migrations from populations from India to Pakistan and Pakistan to India, and that migration was not so easy migration. It was a migration with violence, communal conflicts. So the four major causes was there. The first is 1% GDP. Now second is 80% populations were traditionally affected agricultural farmers with poverty-ridden farmers that created by the Britishers in colonial India. Third is 50% populations like females, they were lived within a four walls, they didn't have any educations, they didn't know what is the democracy. And fourth is the communal violence, migrations and the poverties. Now look at, there are four major challenges for Indian governments at that times, and to face these four major challenges and in this context of democracy and development, realizing of the freedoms and giving promise to all the populations in India that you are now free, you can improve your own socio-economic conditions, but how can they improve? 80% population living in a chronic poverty. So there is a major challenges for the state.
So in this context, what the state did? The state first started with the direct interventions, because this 80% population, they didn't have their own energy, they didn't have their own efficiency, they didn't have their own material condition to improve their socio-economic conditions. That's why they need a certain kind of direct intervention from the state. That's why you had a certain kind of welfare policies, you had a certain kind of, that means community development program, land reforms, all these are there. And then we started later on, that is called providing the material conditions like Indira Awas Yojana, providing the rural electrifications, irrigation systems, providing the health infrastructures. So that's why we went a certain kind of a planning and development process, that is called mixed economy. And with this mixed economy, we started to look at our majority of population, they didn't have their own capacity to improve, that's why state is there to improve them. That is called direct intervention, either through material conditions, or through providing them economic opportunities, or through providing a certain kind of employment opportunities. So that is called direct interventions. And there is called another indirect interventions. That means to development process of any state or any countries or any societies needs a certain kind of infrastructural developments like health, like education, like rural road constructions, like communications. You need a certain kind of indirect interventions, so that through development of these rural infrastructures, the populations will make a certain kind of positive opportunities from this development of the rural resources like infrastructure facilities. So in this context, we had two types of approaches. The first is targeting the populations. That's why we started a first community development program, CDP, started in 1952. That means we are targeting a community as a whole, rural populations, that they are backwards, they were actually didn't have a material conditions, or what Nehru says, they were actually traditionals. You need a certain kind of modernizing process for them. So you need a certain kind of community development programs. And that community development programs is certain kind of package systems where health, education, rural infrastructure development, you need an irrigation policy, these are the theirs, community development programs. So another kind of things we say is indirect interventions, that what I have discussed, like development of rural infrastructures. Now in this context, if you look at Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, it is a direct intervention. Why it is a direct intervention? Because if you look at the condition of the rural population after 90s, you will find the rural class inequality grown up. There was depeasantization. Farmers left their farmings. Majority of the small and marginal farmers, they left their farmings due to the competition of the world market, due to the increasing of prices of the agricultural inputs like technologies, like fertilizers, and they are also not competing with the big farmers. So either they are trapped by the bank loans, or either they are trapped by the rural mahajans with a vast amount of charging interest like 10% interest. So in this context, they left their farmings, and what they did, they lose their jobs. So there was an inequality increased. With inequality, poverty and chronic poverty increase in rural populations. That's why you look at the example of farmer suicide is an example ki how rural chronic poverty increased. In this context, there is a liberalization is going on, there is a global market interventions in rural societies, and in this context, most of the 60% of the Indian populations, those who were actually engaged with a small and marginal farmers, they were losing their farming job because agriculture becomes not sufficient for them. So they lived with a certain kind of food insecurities. In this context, Government of India intervened with a certain kind of policies which is called Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Programs. Act started in 2005, implemented in 2006. And what is the objectives? The first objective is looking to the or targeting to the rural farming households, those are actually depeasantized, or those who are actually doing the farms, but they are not maintaining their food security in their home. They need a certain kind of external interventions like state interventions for either employment, and by employment opportunities, they will get a certain kind of monies, and through this money, they will improve their purchasing power parity. Because after 1990s, you look at due to this depeasantized, due to the migrations, due to the poverties, they were left from the market systems because they didn't have purchasing power parities. So in this context, Government of India started to introduce their programs with a certain kind of legal objectives. And what is this legal objectives? That means state is going to provide you 100 days employment opportunities. And if state is not going to give you 100 days employment opportunity, state will fill up the economic opportunity to you. So in this context, it becomes a legal, and in this context, through this, the rural purchasing power parity increases. In this context, they move from a certain kind of chronic food insecurity poverty to a certain kind of food secure households. So in this sense, Manrega is a direct approach to improve the rural population's purchasing power parities. Look at Manrega also an indirect interventions. How it is an indirect interventions? Because if you look at the employment opportunity formula of the Manrega, you will find most of the job creations in rural sectors was either or is either like improving rural infrastructures. For example, these jobs were constructing and reconstructing the health sectors like hospitals, or you can say like constructing schools, or like you can say irrigations like watershed programs, creation of irrigations or the canals. So in this context, what happened? Ki Manrega job opportunity also creating or developing a rural infrastructure also. In this sense, when rural infrastructure improved through these job of creations, that is indirectly these populations are also getting benefit from this health, educations or certain kind of agricultural sectors. In this context, what we found? Ki Manrega has two main approaches. The first is direct for economic empowerment, and another is indirect, also economic and socio-economic opportunities creations for the rural populations. Now, what you look at, ki when Manrega introduced in India, there was a big debate by the economists, by the social scientists, like Manrega should not be universal, it should be regional, because most of the areas or region of Indian societies that they didn't need Manrega. For example, you say ki coastal areas, they didn't need Manrega because that populations were not suffered from chronic poverty, or they are not suffered from like an absolute poverty. But if you look at the other areas, regions of India like Kalahandi, like Balangir of Odisha, like Koraput, and most of the tribal parts of Odisha, they actually suffer from chronic poverty, and that region particularly needed Manrega as a direct interventions. That's why that funding, those were actually providing for those areas where that most of the population didn't need Manrega, this funding should be, or this money should be transformed to those areas where majority of the populations were actually needed Manrega. But that debate was a debate of actual versus regional. But if you look at Indian, most of the policies are also affected to the voting behavior of the populations, needing a certain kind of ideological orientation of parties. There are different things. That's why we started the popular policies. So in this context, the debate is Manrega is an economic empowerment? Yes, Manrega is an economic empowerment because it improves the purchasing power parity and economic mobility of the populations from rural food insecurity household to rural food security household. Manrega also creating indirect economic opportunity in rural sectors like infrastructure development in health, like educations, like agriculture, and like rural communications. Now next is Manrega also improving political empowerment? Yes, because if you look at our promissory part of the constitution and the declaration part of the constitutions and the implementation part of the constitutions, that India is going to create a certain kind of social justice, and that social justice will be created through direct intervention of the majority of the population. They actually needed a support from the state so that India can create a certain kind of economic inclusion policies. Those who are suffering from the chronic poverty, now they will feel that their existence is there through certain kind of external economic intervention. They can participate in the nation building process. So dear friends, what we discussed? We discussed Manrega in the context of development, inequality, justice and policy and planning. Then we have discussed why Manrega is needed for the Indian societies. Then again we have discussed how Manrega also improve the condition of the rural population through directly, through indirectly. Again we have discussed the debate of the Manrega, whether it should be universal project or it should be regional based progress. Then we have also discussed Manrega either is going for economic empowerment or it is going for political empowerment. Thank you.